A woman went out of the airport. She hailed a taxi and gave the directions to the driver. As soon as they drove off, the woman started to talk. Her blabbering annoyed the driver. He turned to her and said, "I can't hear what you're saying. I'm almost deaf." The woman was shocked and didn't open her mouth for the rest of the ride. Only after she got out of the taxi did she realize the man had lied to her. How did the woman understand it? If the driver had hearing problems, he wouldn't have been able to follow her directions. Detective James was invited to Long Hill College, where more and more students had their things stolen. The detective was asked to investigate these cases. In a week's time, the man had 3 suspects. "What were you doing when the last theft happened?" he asked them. Thomas said, "That day I was away. I had to take my younger sister to her rehearsals." Amanda replied, "I spent that day in the library, getting ready for my presentation." And Ryan said, "This summer, I'm going to Denmark with my parents. That's why I spend all my free time learning Dutch." Detective James immediately understood who was lying. Can you figure it out? It was Ryan. They speak Danish in Denmark. Dutch is the language of the Netherlands. Jason works in the same company as Amy, a bright and lovely girl. The guy has had a crush on Amy since they first met. To attract the girl's attention, Jason agrees to take part in the Brain Challenge game organized by their company. The first task is to crack a rebus puzzle. Jason is given a piece of paper. That's what he sees there. It doesn't take the guy long to figure out the answer. What is it? It's broken promises. Jason is one of the few who gave the correct answer. He moves to the next level. He finds himself in a room full of random stuff. There, he needs to find an object that would be the answer to the following question. What goes up when the rain goes down? Look around and help Jason find the needed object. The guy chose a red and white umbrella, and that was the right answer. His next challenge was to get out of a basement. There are no windows there. Jason sees just one door with a letter combination lock. The only thing that can probably give him some hint is a note he finds in the farthest corner. P plus 3, N minus 1, B minus 1, N plus 4, S plus 1. What's the code word? Jason needed more time to crack this riddle, but he managed to get out of the basement. The code word was SMART. The key to this riddle was hidden in the alphabet. P plus 3 following letters is S. N minus 1 letter is M, and so on. Jason is amazed to find out he's one of the 2 contestants to make it to the finals. Now, he has to do his best to win. The guy comes up to the table with 3 cups on it, but only one of these drinks is safe to try. The other 2 are poisoned. And even though a mistake won't cost Jason his life, the consequences will be unpleasant. The drinks are tea with sugar, cappuccino, and hot chocolate. Which one should Jason choose? If it was indeed sugar in the tea, it would have melted completely. But it didn't happen. Cappuccino looks suspiciously green. It's probably unsafe to drink. Jason opted for the hot chocolate and won the challenge. Now, Amy will definitely notice him. 3 people are hiding in bathroom stalls. Try to figure out who is a pregnant woman. It's the one wearing the untied sneakers. It's often difficult for pregnant women to bend over to lace up their footwear. 2 people were born at the same moment, but they don't celebrate their birthdays on the same day. How is it possible? They were born in different time zones. In one of these zones, it was already the next day. Detective Brown was having dinner in his kitchen. Suddenly, he heard screams coming from his neighbor's house. He rushed there. The door was open. When he ran inside, he saw a paramedic bending over a lying man. Once the doctor saw the detective, he exclaimed, "He fell down the stairs. Luckily, he's just unconscious. I need to take him to the hospital." Detective Brown didn't need to think twice. He called the ambulance and arrested the man on the spot. Why? When the detective was running towards the neighbor's house, he didn't see any car outside. Then how did the paramedic get there? And how did he know his help was needed? You don't have them when you're born, but you get them later. In several years, you don't have them anymore. But then they come again, but in a different form. Many years later, they might leave you again. What are they? They are your teeth. A criminal appeared in a small town, and 2 young women went missing. Right now, the third girl is being taken away. When she comes to her senses, she finds herself in a well with 2 other girls. The well isn't particularly deep, so they decide to try to get out of it. The shortest and slimmest of them climbs on top of the other 2, but she can't reach the edge of the well. What can the girls do to get out of there? The tallest of the girls should climb on top. She has the longer arms and will easily reach the edge of the well. You get lost in the woods in the middle of the winter. Suddenly, you see a cabin. It's dark and cold inside. There is just 1 candle on the table and a wood-burning stove in the corner. You pull out your matchbox and see there's only 1 match left. What should you light first? The match, of course. It was winter when an elderly couple finished building a pretty new house. The husband was responsible for the construction, while his wife was a self-appointed decorator. The house looked beautiful. Very proud, they invited their teenage grandchildren to have a look at their work. But within an hour, 1 guy and 2 girls managed to break several windows. They also knocked down the fence, removed the decorations, and ruined the roof. But the most bizarre thing, the retired couple didn't seem to mind. They just smiled looking at the teenagers. Can you figure out what was going on? The grandparents made a gingerbread house and invited their grandchildren to eat it. 5 costs $25 and 25, $50. If you buy 2 $55, you'll pay $75. What is it that you buy and how much does one item cost? You're buying door numbers, and one of them costs $25. On a rainy Monday morning, a car hit a woman at the crosswalk and sped away without stopping. Luckily, the woman wasn't badly hurt. She even managed to describe the vehicle before being taken to a hospital. It was a green van. The accident happened in a small town. That's why the police figured out easily that there were just 3 cars like that. They found and questioned all the car owners. Gary said, "My sister took part in a concert in another town. I gave her a lift and waited for the show to finish to drive her back." Angela explained to the police she'd been busy with some household chores, gardening, washing her van, and the like. Larry answered he was ill. That's why he spent the whole day in bed drinking hot tea. The police officers understood who was lying right away. Who was it? It was a rainy day. Washing a car and gardening when it's raining? Not the best idea. Angela must be lying. A man was in an 8-story building when a fire started. He jumped out the window but didn't even bruise himself. How is it possible? The man jumped out of the first floor window. 2 people are standing near the river. Both of them want to get to the opposite side, but the boat can carry only one of them. It's summer and the river isn't frozen. And still, they manage to get to the other bank. How? they are on opposite sides of the river. One town had a weird law. All the men leaving there had to be clean-shaven, but no man was allowed to shave himself. The only person in the town who was licensed to shave them was a 40-year-old barber. But then, who shaved the barber? There was no need. The barber was a woman. A mother promised her son to pay him $60 per hour if he washed his hands for 6 seconds before eating a meal. The son did that, and his mom gave him his well-earned money. But the boy got upset. Why? Because he received just 10 cents.
Private Detective Deborah was doing some shopping at the mall. Suddenly, she heard people arguing. The woman went there and saw a stressed shop assistant and several people crowding him. The poor man had found a smartphone and made an announcement, and now several people claimed it was their phone. One man said the phone must have slipped from his bag. A young woman said the gadget belonged to her, and an older woman shouted it was her husband's device. That's when the phone rang. For some reason, the shop assistant handed it to Deborah. The woman glanced at the screen and immediately gave the phone to the man. How did she understand whose device it was? Deborah saw the word wife written on the screen. Emily has 2 glasses filled with water. In the first glass, the water is heated up to 100 degrees. In the second glass, the water is cooled down to minus 100 degrees. The girl drops 2 coins in the glasses at the same time. Which coin will reach the bottom faster? It'll be the coin in the glass with the warm water. The coin in the other glass won't sink at all. The water there is frozen. Jacob and his brother Jack were walking along the street. When they passed a grocery store, Jacob pointed at a young woman and exclaimed, "Oh, my niece is over there." His brother answered, "Oh, right, but it's not my niece." "How come?" The young woman is Jack's daughter. Ashley had a boyfriend, Mark, who was madly in love with her. Unfortunately, the woman didn't love him back. Once, she decided to leave him. Ashley knew Mark wouldn't let her go easily, so she ran away. But Mark was a very rich man and could find her almost anywhere. She had to be careful. 1 week later, Ashley was sitting in her hotel room when she heard a knock at the door. When the woman opened the door, she saw a man. She had never met him before. The stranger apologized. "Oops, I'm sorry, my bad. I was sure it was my room." He then turned around, went down the corridor, and disappeared in the elevator. Ashley rushed back into her room and started to pack her things. She instantly knew Mark had found her. How did she figure it out? No one will knock on their own hotel room door. It was Mark's man who was looking for her. The faster you run, the harder it is to catch this thing. What is it? It's your breath. David and his wife Jessica moved to another town. The place wasn't big. For the locals, new people coming to live there was a big deal. That's why, the next day, the couple's curious neighbors came to say hello. Karen introduced herself and said she was sure they'd become great friends. She had even cooked cupcakes for David and Jessica. Elderly Mrs. Latham told the newcomer she'd been living in the town for almost 80 years. Betty was extremely excited. "A man's come to live in our small town. And so good-looking at that. Awesome news." 2 of the neighbors seemed a bit creepy, and only one looked normal. Who was it? Karen had decorated her cupcakes with something that looked suspiciously like eyes. Betty is too enthusiastic about David. As for Mrs. Latham, she is sure to know lots of things about the town and its inhabitants. She can be a useful source of information, and she cooked them some soup. Brandon's wife told him to cook several eggs, but the man had to boil them for exactly 2 minutes. She left her husband 3 hourglass timers for 3, 4, and 5 minutes. How can the man boil the eggs for exactly 2 minutes? Brandon waited until the water started to boil. Then he turned over the 3 and 5 minute timers. When the 3-minute timer ran out, he dropped the eggs into the water. And when the 5-minute timer ran out, he had his perfectly boiled eggs. It was the first time Eric sailed his brand new yacht. But the man seemed to be out of luck that day. A bad storm sank the yacht, and Eric hardly had any time to make it to the surface. Half conscious, he ended up on some beach. In the morning, the man realized he was stranded on a tiny, uninhabited island. No radio, no cell phone, no means of communication whatsoever, and the island had no trees to make a smoke signal. On the third day, Eric noticed a small plane circling in the sky over the island. Were they searching for him? But the aircraft was flying too high, and the pilot couldn't see Eric. And still, the man did something, and soon he was picked up by a rescue helicopter. How did he attract the pilot's attention? Eric picked up some stones and used them to write SOS on the sand. Helen lives in Singapore with her husband Dennis. Once, she tells her husband she wants to visit her aunt who lives in Italy. Dennis doesn't mind, but he asks his wife to send him a photo as soon as she gets to Europe. When Helen lands in Rome, she sends Dennis a selfie. Under the picture, she writes, "Ciao from Italy, I've just arrived." After looking at the photo, Dennis realizes his wife lied to him. How did he know? In the picture, the clock on the wall shows exactly the same time as the clock in the kitchen, which is in Singapore. If Helen was in Rome, the clock would show a big time difference. One day, Christopher decided he had to develop his logical thinking skills. The guy found a tutor and started visiting him to have private lessons. But this teacher had one interesting habit. Closer to the end of each lesson, he always gave Christopher several riddles. The guy wasn't allowed to go home until he solved them. This Friday, the first riddle went like this. How can you make 6 into an odd number? Tricky. How? He removed the letter S and got IX. That's 9 in Roman numerals. But the guy knew it was just the beginning. The next riddle was even more difficult. It's thin, but when water splashes it, none seeps through. When hit, it changes color. It covers an incredibly complex thing, yet it's very easy to flex. What is it? At first, Christopher didn't have any idea. Duh, he'd have to stay and crack riddles till midnight. Luckily, in a moment, it dawned on him. It's the skin. Christopher's tutor was impressed with the guy's progress. Okay, he said, one more riddle and you can go home. 3 doctors said that Ryan was their brother, but Ryan claimed he didn't have any brothers. Who was lying? Christopher figured out right away that everyone was telling the truth. All the doctors were Ryan's sisters. Whew, he could finally go home. The morning after a heavy snowfall, Justin went outside and stopped in his tracks. He saw there was twice as much snow on top of his garage as there was on his neighbor's. Still, Justin didn't get surprised or upset. Why? Justin's garage is twice as big as his neighbor's. No wonder it also has twice as much snow. Amy went on holiday to the seaside and met 3 guys there. They were friends, but it didn't stop all of them from trying to impress the girl. In the evening, they all met in a restaurant to have dinner, and the guys started to tell Amy about their adventures. Sam boasted, I'm a pilot, and I've already traveled all over the world." Larry said, "I once took part in an expedition to the North Pole. It was amazing. I saw penguins and polar bears." Jerry barged in, "And I'm an astronaut. When I was in space last time, I went on a spacewalk. I wanted to see our planet from above, but I was almost blown away by a strong wind." Who's lying to make a better impression? Both Larry and Jerry are lying. Penguins live near the South Pole, and there's no wind in outer space. It's an almost perfect vacuum. Andrew and Gary are twins. They were born just 1 minute apart, and Andrew is the elder of the two. But for some mysterious reason, they celebrate their birthdays 2 days apart once every several years. How is this possible? Andrew was born at 11:59 p.m. on February 28. It wasn't a leap year. So Gary, who appeared just 1 minute later, was already born on March 1st. That's why, during leap years, they have 2 days between their birthdays. A famous scientist went missing. The last time his colleagues saw him, he was in his laboratory. When the police arrived, they found a calendar lying on the man's table. There were several numbers written in pencil at the bottom: 6, 4, 9, 10, 11. The police officers had 5 suspects: David, Sarah, Jason, Betty, and Kevin. Who is behind the scientist's disappearance? It's Jason. The numbers stand for months, and the first letter of each month spells the name of the criminal. So the 6th month is June, and the first letter of June is J. The 4th month is April, and the first letter of April is A. And so on. Smarty pants. So Dave had to sneak into his mom's computer to delete some emails he accidentally sent her. His mom had a bad memory, so she always had notes with her passcodes. Luckily, the note was right there again, saying 9868. Dave entered the passcode, but it was wrong. Why? And what's the actual passcode? The note was just turned upside down. The actual passcode is 8986. Stephanie came home after a long day at work. She was very excited to finally eat her favorite chocolate she had been dreaming about all day. But the chocolate was gone. Stephanie interrogated each of her family members. Her husband said, "I just got home from work too and haven't eaten anything all day." Her daughter Della said, "I was studying all day and didn't eat anything too." Della's twin brother Arnie said, "It wasn't me." Who ate the chocolate? Take a closer look at Della's desk. There's a chocolate wrapper, but she said she didn't eat anything. She must have lied. A grocery store manager noticed that recently they started to lose watermelons. He suggested that there's a watermelon thief coming at the store from time to time. He opened one of the security videos and could immediately tell who the thief was. Look at the picture and try to guess who is the culprit. Look at the guy in the middle. He has a ball in his hands, but he's holding it like it's very heavy. Usually, balls aren't heavy, so it must be a watermelon. Tom and Mark came to the job audition. The company doesn't want to hire parents because they need full commitment. Both men said that they're not parents, but one of them is lying. Can you tell who? It's Mark. Take a closer look at his hand. There's a pink scrunchie on it. He must have done his daughter's hair before the audition. Mrs. Smith invited her neighbors over for a fancy dinner. She used her best tea set and silver cutlery and cooked a great meal. However, during the dinner, she realized that one of her neighbors is a vampire. Who is the vampire, and how did she understand it? The vampire is the one who brought his own plastic spoon and is eating with it instead of with Mrs. Smith's silver cutlery. That's because vampires are afraid of silver. Four friends met after the summer break and talked about how their summer went. Toby was bragging about the months he spent in Chile and how hot it was there. However, his friends didn't believe him and called him a liar. Why? Chile is located in the southern hemisphere. During the summertime, it's winter there. Toby said it was hot, which can't be true. Three friends, Blair, Chloe, and Nell, were walking all day around town. They found a beautiful but dusty house where no one lived. They entered it and started to take pictures. In the evening, they were scrolling through the pictures and one of them made a scream. Take a look at the photos and say which one scared them and why. It's the first picture. There was no one in the house except for the girls, but on that picture, they're all three of them together, snapped from behind. Michelle was having a birthday party. She noticed her brother was eating in his room with some girl. However, she didn't know who it was. She got very curious, so after they left, she sneaked into his room to find some hints. There were three girls at her party: Jasmine, Sydney, and Nicole. Michelle immediately guessed who her brother was dating. Can you? Her brother was dating Jasmine. Look at the dishes and the cutlery. There's a lipstick stain on the fork. Jasmine is the only one wearing lipstick. Pamela is a lawyer and Samantha is a journalist. Can you guess which one of these women is a mother? Take a look at the background. On the wall behind Samantha, there's some colorful marker scribbles. She must be a mother. Gianna was getting ready for her date. Suddenly, the lights in her apartment went off. She was almost ready and only needed her gloves. It was dark and she couldn't find a fitted pair. She only had gloves of two colors, brown and black. She was already late, so she decided to leave, taking several gloves with her. How many gloves should she take with her to be sure there's a pair of the same color? She just needs 3. Even if the first 2 are of a different color, the third one will either be black or brown, matching the other one. A police officer was following a robber around the city. Suddenly, the robber entered the hospital and disappeared. When the police officer entered the building, there were 3 workers. One of them must be a robber who dressed up to pretend to be a doctor. Can you tell who? It's the man in the middle. Look at his badge. There's a picture of a woman on it. He must have worn the first pair of clothes he noticed. It was Christmas morning and the whole family was home. When Bailey returned in her room after watching her show on TV, she found that someone stole all the presents she had been wrapping. She questioned every person in the house. Her mom said that she had been making dinner. Her dad said he had been mowing the lawn. Her brother said he had been playing video games in his room. Who stole the presents? It was Bailey's dad. It's winter, and we could see that it's snowing outside. He just couldn't mow the lawn. In the Arts Museum, the lights went off for a couple of minutes. When they came back on, the most expensive painting was missing. The detective arrived and started the investigation. There were 3 suspects, and he questioned each of them. Jessica, a dance teacher, said that she had been so scared when the lights went off that she couldn't even move and for sure didn't touch anything. Derek, a journalist, said he'd been in the bathroom at the time. Collins, an engineer, said he had been in a different room of the museum, watching the dinosaur fossil. Who's lying? It's Collins. It's an art museum. There are no dinosaur exhibitions. Can you tell who's not a real werewolf? It's actually the guy who looks like a werewolf. Werewolves only turn into wolves during the time of the full moon and at night. It's daytime now, so the guy must be just wearing a costume. Esme was having a walk in the forest. After the dawn, she tried to find her way back home, but got lost. Finally, she came across a witch's house and asked her to take her home. The witch agreed to help her, but only if Esme solved her riddle. If not, she'd have to stay with the witch forever. The witch took an apple, tied a string to it, and held it. She asked Esme to cut the string in half so that the apple didn't fall down. However, Esme couldn't touch the apple or hold it. How could she do it? Esme should tie a knot in the middle of the string, make it into a loop, and then cut the apple. The time police have found out that there's a time traveler who uses the time machine more often than allowed. They tracked him and followed him to the Stone Age. Can you guess who's the time traveler? It's this guy who's wearing sneakers. Sneakers in the Stone Age? Really? Mr. Brown was robbed in the street. The culprit hit him on the right side of his head and ran away with his wallet. Mr. Brown didn't see who it was, but he noticed that the person entered a nearby hospital. When he entered, there were 3 people sitting there. Take a close look at them and tell who was the culprit. Mr. Brown was hit on the right side of his face. This means that the robber is left-handed. Look at where the bags stand next to those people. The first woman has her purse on the left side of her, which means it must have been her. For her birthday, Sienna got a beautiful hairpin. She brought it to school and showed it to her friends during lunch. Then she left for the bathroom, and when she returned, the hairpin was gone. Take a look at the pictures before and after, and tell which of her friends stole it. Look at the glass of juice of the red-haired girl. It looks like there's more juice on the later picture. No, there's not. She just put a hairpin in the glass. Mr. Green got in a car accident and spent a month in the hospital. He got amnesia and partially forgot things. He didn't have any family, and after a month, he finally returned home. He found his street, but then he realized he didn't remember which of the 2 houses was actually his. Can you guess which one it was? His house is the one where the snow is unshoveled. He spent a month in the hospital and lives alone, so no one could clean the driveway. Look at the Christmas photos of 2 families. Can you tell which family is poor? The poor family is the second one. Even though the son has a big present, the parents don't have any presents at all. They probably couldn't afford to buy presents for themselves. Ellis had to go to the hospital the other day. When she entered, she immediately felt something off about the place. Walking along the hall, she spotted 3 doctors. There was something completely wrong about one of them. Which doctor is crazy? The one on the left, he's got wolf eyes and teeth, and there's no badge on his uniform. Stay away from him, Ellis. Alright, Ellis didn't listen to our piece of advice and went straight to Dr. Wolf's room. He says he needs to apply some new protective cream on her, but in fact, he just wants to test it. After covering Ellis with this magic lotion, she shouldn't have trusted him. He makes Ellis choose one of 3 containers to jump into. Wow, this is a weird hospital. One of them is filled with toxic waste. In the second container, there's acid that can eat through metal. The third one is filled with lava from a volcano that almost ruined a whole town a year ago. What container should Ellis choose? At least this time, Ellis made the right choice. She picked the container with lava. The volcano erupted a year ago, so the lava is already completely solid and cool. Okay, she nailed the first experiment, and Dr. Wolf gives Ellis a choice of 3 pills. He says the red one can help see the past, the blue one can help see the future, and the yellow one can help read other people's minds. Which one should Ellis choose? Ellis was smart enough this time. She randomly picked the yellow one, but she suspected it was another experiment. She gulped the water but never swallowed the pillow and still has it in her cheek. In fact, all 3 of them were poisoned. When the wolf went outside for a second, Ellis spat out the pill and ran away. Hey, try the urgent care clinic, Ellis. No wolves there. Ginny was cooking dinner for her friends. When everyone was at the table, she suddenly realized there was something wrong with one of her friends. Which friend didn't like the meal? It's Mike. He secretly shared it with Jenny's dog. Everybody knows that an old witch lives in this spooky old house. Nobody really wants to meet her. Mary is in this house right now, but she seems to be alone. How come? Who said witches can't have a name Mary? She was once young and beautiful too, but then that darn spell happened. One town had a weird law that said all the men had to be cleanly shaven, but no man was allowed to shave himself. The only person who was licensed to shave them was a 40-year-old hairdresser. But who shaved the hairdresser? Yeah, there was no need. The hairdresser was a woman. Allison met a stranger yesterday, and she immediately knew who he was. She hadn't seen this person before, and no one had ever described him to her. He wasn't a celebrity, and he wasn't doing anything unusual. So, how come she knew who he was? The man was the twin brother of one of Allison's friends. Bill is a shoe shiner. He offers his services to passers-by for free. Still, people who accept it end up paying him of their own will. How so? Bill shines only one shoe for free. People don't want to look bizarre with just one clean shoe and have to pay for the shining of the other one. The king told his 3 daughters to place 3 identical kettles with the same amount of water on the fire. The king promised that the husband of the daughter whose kettle would boil first would become his heir. His youngest daughter's kettle boiled first. How come? While the other daughters kept lifting their kettle's lids to check if the water was already boiling, the youngest one kept it closed. Up for some math? Nah, just kidding. You'll only need your logic. Find a way to get 200 out of 188 by just using one line. Use use the line to cut 188 horizontally. This way, you'll get two 100s. One person was 25 years old in 2000 and 20 years old in 2005. How is this possible? This person lived before Common Era. One man went to his friend's party and told his wife he'd be back before sunrise. He shaved and left home. He returned as promised before sunrise, but he was sporting a long, thick beard. How come? The man and his wife lived in a place with polar nights that can last for several months. A man was driving his car all the way from New York to Boston. Only at the end of the trip did he discover that one of his car's tires had been punctured from the very beginning. Still, he managed to reach his destination successfully, and his journey wasn't affected by this problem at all. How is it possible? The punctured tire was the spare one. The financial director of a big company finally persuaded new partners to sign a super important agreement. He then put this document into a folder and left it on the table in his office. When he arrived at work the next morning, the folder was gone. John gathered all the employees who were in the office at the time and questioned them. The cleaning lady said that she had been busy washing the floor and hadn't paid attention to anything around. The designer explained that he hadn't left his working place even once. What's more, being an artist, he didn't have any interest in agreement documents. The accountant admitted that he had entered John's office to have some documents signed, but once he noticed there was no one inside, he immediately left. Who took the folder with the agreement? It was the designer. John never mentioned which folder was gone. How would he know that the missing folder had an agreement inside? Eric wears either only black or only white socks. One morning, he was in a hurry getting ready for an important meeting with new partners. Suddenly, the power goes out. The guy has 10 white and 10 black socks in his drawer, but all of them are mixed. He doesn't want to look silly at work wearing different socks. If it's completely dark in the room and Eric can't see anything, how many socks should he pull out of the drawer to get himself two matching ones? Three socks are more than enough. In a set of 3 socks, he's bound to have 2 of the same color. A hungry vampire is following you in a lonely street one dark night. Suddenly, you see a house with its door wide open and decide to hide there. The vampire can't enter your shelter since you locked the door in the nick of time, but it's waiting for you outside. However, you still have some hope. There are 3 doors leading out of the house. When you open the first door, there's molten lava. No thanks. The second door leads to the room with tarantulas as large as your head. Yikes. As for the third door, you can definitely hear a huge dog barking inside that room, and you're kind of afraid of it. What should you do? Just wait till morning. Vampires can't stand daylight, and your pursuer will have to leave you alone. You're trapped in a room that's slowly getting filled with water coming from a faucet on the wall. There are no windows in the room, and the door is sealed shut. You have a mop and a big bucket. So how are you going to get yourself out of this one? Come on, just turn the faucet off. Now it's better. Jane told her boss someone had taken the document she prepared for the meeting. She added that she had noticed someone come in wearing a smart suit, gloves, and a black mask, safety first. This person also had 3 rings on their fingers. The boss didn't believe her. Why? She said the person was wearing gloves. Then how did she see 3 rings on their fingers? Jane must have simply forgotten to print those documents out. A hotel owner was visiting the construction site to see the progress. He wanted to start welcoming the guests as soon as possible and had big plans. At some point, he left his briefcase with important documents on the table. Some worker grabbed it and ran away. The hotel owner didn't see who it was, but he immediately called the police. There were 3 suspects. The architect said he had been talking on the phone, trying to get electricity for the site as there was not. The designer told the police he had been trying to find the best paint for the walls. The electrician explained he had been down in the basement trying to fix a burst light bulb. The detectives figure out who was lying. Can you? It was the electrician. How could he fix the burst light bulb if there was no electricity at the construction site at all? Ah, liar, liar, pants on fire.